Bray, County Wicklow. One of the largest and busiest towns on the east coast, and a popular resort for tourists across the world. A huge amount of traffic and pedestrians weave their way through Bray on a daily basis. It is our duty to ensure that the amenities and facilities of our town are available to all people. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities says that the state is responsible to ensure equal access for all individuals. This means that all people should be able to get out and about and use shops, public buildings, transport and more. This is our town, and all citizens deserve the right to good access so that they can enjoy all that it has to offer.
I'm Joe Bollard. I've lived in Bray since about 1965. Bray isn't the easiest place in the world to get around. Mind you, it's not the most difficult, but things could be a lot better. The difficult part for guide dogs are, first of all, overhanging hedges, trees and objects that are sticking out over walls. And I also get lots of scratches on my face and bumps on my shoulders. And that is the difficulty. That's my big complaint about moving around in Bray, mobility-wise.
I'm Karen Farrer. I'm originally from Wicklow and living just outside Shankill now. I've been paraplegic for 8.5 years. In Bray, access is very varied. I find the lower part of the town isn't so bad, but as you work your way up to the higher part, there invariably are more entrances into shops and restaurants with a step. On the seafront it's much better. I find everywhere there is very accessible, but because the main street of Bray where the shopping is, I tend to avoid it and go to places in Carrickmines and Dundrum where I know that there's total access.
Hi, my name is Artur Gomulka. I came from Poland 7 years ago, and I can say I found Irish people very friendly and helpful. This is my first days here. 7 years ago there was no services for foreign people like me coming to Ireland. That changed a lot since that. There's a few differences between Poland and Ireland, of course. The first obvious is traffic, driving on the other side of the world, but of course you can get used to that very quickly. I think the biggest problem when you're coming to the country with the foreign language is the language barrier and isolation, which is connected with that.
My name is Mary Chadwick. I'm 88 years of age. I'm living here for the last 20 years. Previous to that I lived in England. It's a good, fairly good bus service, and I have a lot of nieces and nephews that take me out in their cars, you know. I mean, I just don't go any further in the town. If I want to go any further, I have to get transport from the family. Yeah, hospital visits or anything like that, you know. There's a lot of taxis, you know, it's no problem getting one. But I only wish I had learned to drive, you know, myself. But my husband put me off. He said I had no sense of direction. He said, don't ever ask me to get into a car beside you. And I was in the position that time I could have bought a car, you know. But there you are, that's husbands for you. No, I'm going back a bit, you know, as one does when one gets old. Reminisce. But there's one time when I was growing up in Bray, the trains from Dublin to Bray were always packed with all the people coming out to Bray, you know, and it was a very thriving town. There was so much in it, you know. It was always packed, and we always had a band on the seaside. It was a great town, you know. There was plenty of picture houses and dance halls and all that kind of thing, you know.
The people in Bray are brilliant. I get a lot of assistance from the people in Bray and from the Gardaí, and whenever they see me coming along. I spend a lot of time down on the seafront, which I will say is very accessible. People are helpful, as I said earlier. People, if they see me stopped, even if it's only to just blow my nose, they'll come over and say, "Joe, are you all right?" People are generally helpful. Finnegan's buses are really good to me, because when they pull up at a stop, they'll tell me it's Joe, it's John, or they'll say it's Finnegan's, and they'll allow me to get on my own way. Same way with Dublin Bus, the 184 or the 84. If I'm down at the station, they'll pull up and they'll say 184 Joe, or an 84, or 145 Joe, and they know me so well, they say, "You don't want this one." Going into Dublin, into shops in Dublin, can be really hairy sometimes. You can be left standing for 5, even longer minutes in an empty shop with a shop assistant standing behind a counter looking at you. You don't know if there's anyone there. They're looking at you. They won't even say good morning or can I help. That is very difficult. That doesn't happen in Bray. The staff in the Dart station itself are wonderful, but then once I get onto the Dart, I have a problem. When you get onto the Dart, you sit down, you're fine, you're going into Dublin. About 8 times or even 7 times out of 10, the audio announcements will be working and you're fine. The next station is Shankill, the next station is Killiney. But quite often, and it's true, there are no announcements. But to take, for instance, a friend of mine with her guide dog wants to come out on a beautiful day and have down at the seafront with Joe and have coffee and a chat. So she gets on the train at Tara Street and suddenly she realises there's no announcements. She's not used to the Dart, she doesn't know where she is, and she's in a compartment on her own. There's no one near her. And she rings me and says, "Joe, I got on at Tara Street and I think I've stopped at 4 stations. And I say to her, "What sort of noise is the train making?" And she describes it. "Oh," I said, "okay, you're just coming into Sydney Parade." I shouldn't have to do that. Neither should she. 7 years ago, they told me, "Oh, Joe, we'll have it all fixed by Christmas." Christmas is a long time coming.
Well, I usually drive everywhere. Parking spaces, in some places they're brilliant. In other places, the car parking spaces, they just have disabled, but it's the same narrow width. If you're a wheelchair user, you just need the extra width for when the door is open to get out the wheelchair. So if you've got a disabled spot that is just the same width as an ordinary parking space, then you're forced really to take up two disabled parking spots, which isn't good. See, in the high street, I rarely get out in the high street. I stay in the car a lot because I don't go shopping there because it's so challenging. Disabled toilets are always a challenge. A lot of places are very aware and are very good and have provided that necessity. But the fact is that a lot of them have doors that open inwards. So, and it's something you wouldn't think about until you're in a wheelchair. But sometimes there's extra bins put in as well. But in the places where there's not, just the whole space that the door takes up, sometimes you're afraid you've got in and will you ever get out again? If the doors opened outward, that would make life a lot simpler. I think some premises probably just aren't aware of the needs of wheelchair users, and sometimes we maybe moan about it and don't say it to the people to give them a chance to correct it. I was meeting a friend in Paris Court lately for lunch and I did mention it, and I've heard, now I'm delighted to say that there's plans underway to provide a few wheelchair spaces just right outside. So it just is very encouraging to hear things like that. So maybe it's better if we just become more vocal and mention it to people in places that would like to go.
Occasionally you'll get a 4-wheel right up against the wall, and that necessitates me going out onto the road and round it again. I have to do that, you know.
Yeah, some of the ramps going into the shops are a bit high. I mean, I'm supposed to have anti-tips on, but I mean, by the time you get the chair parting it out of the car, it's another 2 things to do, so most of us don't bother. But we're always scared that going up a ramp would always not a good look when the whole thing goes back. But I find if you just stop for a minute and look around, somebody will always say, because people don't know what to be doing with you in the wheelchair, you know. And if you look around, there's always somebody who'll say, can I help you? You know, so maybe just give Joe Public an acknowledgement that people in Ireland are very good.
Lots of banks, offices and civil information offices. The forms were translated to Polish or other languages, which make us feel more inclusive in the community and very helpful. I personally I don't use them at the moment. I use the English forms. However, many of my friends find them very useful. All the information on the buses and DART and similar services translated to Polish make that much easier for our families and friends visiting Ireland who they don't speak English usually on everyday basis. That I think is a great job Irish community and Irish government is doing to assimilate people.
I have a small pension from England, and it's great that I could go up and be served. But now they've altered the arrangements, and I was up there about a fortnight ago, and I can't stand very long, you know, and I was up there for nearly half an hour trying to be served because they were so busy, and the queues were getting bigger, and I was exactly an hour in that bank that day. And in the end, I didn't feel too good, so I walked down near the door to get a bit of air. So I was a bit annoyed at that. And I was thinking seriously of taking the few bob I have in it and going to the credit union, you know. But so far I haven't done anything about it. But I was really annoyed. You know, I know it's a long time to wait to be served, isn't it? But having said that, I had got out of the queue because I couldn't stand that long. You know, they forget you're getting old, and they should be able to accommodate people like that, you know. God, I'm too old now. All the internet and all that kind of beyond me. It's all right for you young people, but I'd be lost, you know. I find traffic lights vary a lot, different traffic lights. Some are more quicker than others. And I thought the one here, Sunnybank, is dreadful. You wait ages over here for the traffic lights. They're very bad. And others then are too quick. Don't give you much time, you know, to cross the road. They forget. So, I mean, there's a lot of elderly people in this town, and they don't seem to consider them.
When Liam first opened up here, he came to me personally and he said, Joe, I have stuff outside the shop. If it's too far out, come and do a test with the dog and let me know. And he went to that length to make sure that I was okay. That sort of thing appeals to me, you know. He really is, and every time I come down with the dog...
As we can see from the film, the main accessibility challenges in Bray are overhanging branches, wider parking spaces for people with disabilities, toilet doors should open out instead of in. We need to be aware of different language and culture, and we also need to be mindful of people being expected to queue for long periods if they've got mobility issues. All of these issues need to be given serious consideration by planners, builders, but especially all of us as public citizens.